Hey guys, how's it going? It's Kyra here with another Exos Heroes video, and in today's video we're continuing the Awakening series here, talking about all the characters of this faction. And for today's video is going to be on Lepin. And so before I get into it, if we can get a like on this video, and if you're new here, a subscriber on the channel, that'd be awesome. Lepin, I think she is a really good character, and she's really interesting to talk about because I think there's a lot of potential serial crafting here when it comes to this character. So like all the other videos, I like to start with the kit, and then I'm going to go into what game modes we can use her in, some of the ideas and thoughts on just how good the character is. So the first thing, she is a first aid 3 character and grants heal 100% of attack to an ally if they take damage and their health falls to 20% or less, gains mana 1 mana if own health is at 20% or less when triggered, and then gains 1 mana if own health is at 70% or more when triggered. Then she has this Shelter Investigator 3 passive, increases damage by 200% against Monomos with Frost Barrier. So Monomos is in Shelter of Avarice, and I feel like this is actually really hard content if you are trying to clear for the first time and don't have a first Guardian, especially if you don't have a first Guardian character for that day of the challenge. Is actually pretty tough. And kind of a cool mechanic here is increases damage by 200%. You would think on a healer that's bad. Why would you ever want to increase attack on a healer against Monomos? But if we look at her passive, grants heal 100% of attack. So getting that 200% increased damage actually increases the passive healing, which for this one mechanic, it's kind of a niche scenario, but especially when you're first going through the game and still really trying to do these challenges, or let's say they have lunatic level difficulties for some of the current challenges. What if they make a lunatic level difficulty for Shelter of Avarice? I think really caring about making a good team for Shelter actually matters, whether you're a new player or potentially if you're a late game player down the line. So that's actually a good passive. I like that passive even on a healer. Normally you'd want this on an attacker, but it's still good even on a healer. Or now she has Harbinger of Awakening, afflicts Mark of Revenge to an enemy that kills an ally. This buff is removed when the target with Mark of Revenge is killed or damaged by Harbinger of Awakening, and activates the Awakening effects of all allies with the Awakening skill. But most of these characters have a really good synergy with this passive and the stat bonus they gain when awakened. The only one that so far that makes no sense to me is Jakan. I did a video on him. It's refreshing after talking about him to see one that actually makes sense. So she's a healing character. Obviously she's going to be targeted because if we look at the rest of her kit, she has revives on her A2. She's going to be targeted. So I actually really like that they chose her for the Awakened faction, because not only does the stat boost make sense, but the Awakened passive makes sense on a character that revives dead allies. When a character that died on your team, someone on the enemy team kills one of your members, then you hit them, then the mark procs all the Awakening passive characters. When she's awakened, she gains the buff increase on block by 360, which is massive, or decreases critical hit by 180, can be removed. Then the special increases attack speed by 25 and gains damage immunity for 4 turns when health is at or below 30%. All of these things are absolutely incredible on a character, especially when the character is trying to survive and trying to revive your members of the team. I really think they did a really good job when it comes to FC Lepin, especially after the core verse. And I really like that she is an Awakened style character. I think this, out of all the fake core effects, this is probably my favorite possible passive that they could have put on a character like her that is trying to heal and also trying to revive dead allies. So I really like this passive. Even if she's not super meta, I just like that there was a thought process in here. Like this, it all has such good synergy and all seems to just make sense. I'm just a fan of it. And then now she has her A1 here, deals 187% damage to one enemy, grants heal over time that heals one ally by 12% of own maximum health every turn for 4 turns when the skill hits. Resets the turn of the ally once every 6 turns. Cleanses all debuffs and damage over time effects from the ally. I think this is a really unique passive. I think I really like the reset turn mechanic in this game. I think it's kind of cool. The only drawback to her when it comes to heal, when you compare her to other healers, is that she doesn't have this massive burst heal like they do. She just has this smaller heal. Like her normal moves throughout this, like when you look at other healers like Talia, Dorka, those have consistent big heals. Or you have other healers like Anastasia that has one massive heal. Whereas her consistent move is significantly smaller when it comes to being able to heal characters. And then she has, the revive mechanic later here, but just in general, that's probably her A2 here is heals all allies by 24% of unmaximum health. This is on a burst move, so this is a big heal, but still the modifier is still about half of normal big burst heals, and then cleanses all debuffs and damage over time effects from all allies, revives all dead allies, and grants damage immunity one time. I think that's the big thing that makes this passive actually kind of nice. Whereas before, when she got first released, there was not a single healer in the game that has this kind of revive mechanic that was ever viable. And I think the main reason why is because when you revive all dead allies, if you don't grant them damage immunity, they're just going to die again immediately. Even if they're already dying before, why would they die again? Also, another drawback, I think, when it comes to these kind of healers is most of the time they have the lowest stats on the team. So if anyone's going to die, especially if it's these big AoEs, it's usually them. So that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to this is there's not much content in the game that's really difficult that you can expect someone to die in, especially from a PvE perspective. That's not these massive AoE burst moves, like for example in the Dragon. In Trials and in hard campaign, there is a lot of single target situations where she can really shine, where people will die and she can consistently pick them up and you can kind of get them in a loop and actually clear the content. I think she's really useful for, especially for clearing Trials and for clearing hard campaign. The point I was trying to say is that before she came out, there was not a single one of these style of healers that was ever viable. And I think the main reason why was because of the damage immunity not being applied. Her putting damage immunity on these characters and allowing them to take an additional hit to then cycle back around and get healed, maybe get healed passively by Dorka, maybe get healed again by her on the next go around, maybe another healer on the team actually being able to get a heal off, maybe themselves having some kind of self-sustain, something like that, to where they don't immediately get bodied the second they get revived. And I think that's one of the major reasons why she's actually takes this concept to healer and actually makes it work, is because of this damage immunity part of the passive here. So I think she's a good character. I think from a PvP perspective, she's not super top tier, but I think she is a viable option for your PvP teams. I think she can be good in a lot of different comps. She's kind of like one of those splashable characters you can throw in like Tantalo and like Iris. A little different. Ideally, I think in almost all situations, those two characters are better. But in a tag team scenario, when you're trying to fill out the rest of your roster, I can see her being viable. If you're coming up and you don't have those characters, I think she's a really good character to slot in. I think she's definitely best paired with an AoE Frost character to make sure she can actually use her reset move. Because she's a very slow character, so she's always going to be, for the most part, she's going to be last in your rotation, so you'll be able to get these other characters. So I think she's really well paired with a Bathory, for example, or like a Tantalo with Signature Force to be able to AoE proc these Frost passives if you're going against a summer character. Any summer character, that's going to be one thing you're really going to want to watch out for, is this Summer Blessing part right here, where when the battle starts, grants Frost damage immunity. So from a PvP perspective, that's going to be a big passive that you're going to always want to take into account if you're going to put Lepin on your team. Being able to proc that is going to take so long because she's last in your rotation. She's a single target damage dealer. She would only be able to proc one of those, then has to go all the way, wait all the way until into the next rotation, and then has to hit that same character to ever be able to use that move. So it's a really big deal if you're going to be using her on your PvP team. And so when it comes to gearing her, I think if you're really going to invest in a character, I'm talking like Unleash Potential, the works, like everything, she's a massive investment because she's a legendary character. You're going to need a ton of solar seals. You're going to need a ton of the nation specific currency that you farm through exploration. But I think she's definitely a character that is worth it. And I think she's a kind of character that is really going to scale well into the harder the content in the game goes. I can see her being useful and as an option there, because being able to revive dead allies is definitely something that is always going to be viable. I think it really depends on what kind of content they release in the future, but I think she's just really useful. If she's so useful in hard content now, I think that's just going to be something that she is always going to stay viable. I don't think she loses her usefulness as the game progresses, in my opinion. If all the PvE content that is hard, all of it's just a ton of AoE, then potentially she won't get much use. You're just going to want big burst heals instead of characters that can revive, because the characters that's going to die first is probably her in that situation. But if they're going to be a lot of like really hard hitting single target abilities, then pick them, and then she actually has a chance to be able to pick them up. When it comes to gearing a character in their awakening stones, if you're taking her into PvE only, I think the stones do matter, but you can really get away with going like 6 red stones in that situation. But when it comes to PvP, especially when you really start to gear a character, the awakening benefits, the stats you gain, it used to be a big deal. Like these stats, like you gain like 5,000 attacks. So if I wanted to awaken this character, for example, it used to be a really big deal to make sure you're hitting the right passive here. 5,000 attack versus 2,250, that's a big deal right there. Or 175 defense versus 700 defense or something like that. Even though very niche characters use this, like only Shufraken really uses that. Nowadays, these stats used to be such a big percentage of your overall stats that you would almost have to go this. And when it comes to the percentage of raw stats your characters has now, when you actually fully invest in them, that's actually a pretty small percentage of their overall stats. So it's better to make sure you don't get broken. Everything should be, you want to min-max it and make sure you try to get the best possible effect. But the effects really don't matter too much anymore. The main thing you want to do is make sure you don't get broken. For example, what I'm doing, when you're really invested in a character, look at this, 35,000 HP. So the difference between 2,000 HP and 5,000 HP really doesn't matter anymore. So that's why I go four set red and then have 2 other sets that I don't think are going to get procced. I have 5 set red. I wouldn't do this. I would have like another one on here. So whatever the meta is, you try to find that you're not going to get hit by. If I needed to, if red was everywhere, if there was no way I can get away with you doing 4 set red, I would do whatever combination possible that gets me some stats. Doesn't really matter which stats, but some stats, but make sure I don't get broken. That's all that matters in PvP. Because when you really invest in a character, the stats you gain from awakening are really not that big of a deal compared to making sure you don't get broken. Because once you get broken, the character is going to die pretty quick. So that's the thing I would really want to make sure on, especially with Lepin, because she is going to be a target. People are going to want to kill her because once they kill her, then you can't revive. So I think that's a really big deal when it comes to awakening stones. And I think maybe that deserves its own video when it comes to talking about awakening stones, but that's my thought process when it comes to picking the stone. So I think she's a good character. I think she's worth investing in. And then that's how I would awaken and stone her. When it comes to content, I think what makes her so cool is that when it comes to especially hard PvE content and even PvP content, is she really helps you get by or squeak by even if you are under-geared or don't have great characters for it, but content that you probably couldn't clear. She actually is one of the characters you can slot in and push you over that content. Like, let's say all the characters around you, it's a consistent loop of the enemy kills specific characters. You can probably cheese your way into being able to beat content by constantly reviving those same characters over and over and clear content you probably might not necessarily have been able to without her. So I think she's a really good character. I think they did a really good job with her. She might not be super viable at the moment when it comes to super high-end PvP, but she's still a really good choice, and she's still on there. She's one of those characters where like, okay, you mean, oh, you're running her. Okay, that's a solid choice. She's not like the most popular, but still good in PvP and still really good in PvE content, and I think is going to scale well into future content down the line. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think about FC Lepin. That's it for this video. You guys have a good day. Peace.